Hello, Joy. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great hearing you briefly talk about what you're involved with as the founder and executive director of Youth Leader Fund at CBC GDF the other day. What you and your organization are doing are absolutely significant. And we would love to take this chance to know more about your projects and your views on sustainable development future in China and sustainable development issues. Do you want to first introduce yourself briefly?
Okay, thank you for inviting me today. I'm the founder and executive director of Youth Leader Fund under China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation. So we are the organization focused on youth art, tech, and science fictions to do the sustainable development communication and education.
Okay, thank you. So the first question we have for you is more about the general picture. Where do you see the biggest progress and prominent changes in sustainable development in China in recent years?
I think for me, I start to get involved in sustainable development, especially. I think sustainability is kind of like a broad term. It like included that like economic development, environment development, as cultural development as well. So it's like three-dimensional sustainable development. So either we lack of any of them, three of them, there won't be a sustainable future. So environment-wise, I have been getting involved since 2015. So compared with 5 years ago now, like you can see, before you went back to talk with Chinese people about environment protection, environment-friendly lifestyles, they would just laugh at you because if you haven't like reached like economic development, how could you think about development? You have to pollute it first, and then you have to solve the problem later on when you have the ability to solve it, right? So now, if you go back to China, you will see that there's a lot of first you can feel like, let's say there's one sentence called like clear water and green mountains as important as to the like mountains of silver and gold, right? Everybody notice about that sentence said by President Xi. So also you can see there's a lot of environment policies on place now. So everybody is full aware of the importance of the sustainable development, especially the environment development. So I see like the big environment in China is quite good right now compared to 5 years ago. Yeah, I think this is a big progress, you could say.
Yeah, I'm sure there have been lots of progress, and then the people's view towards environmental protection has definitely, they're more aware of environment and climate change, that's for sure. But where do you see the challenges that lies, and what are the challenges in the near future?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, only my perspective, so people already have some like conscious about the importance of the sustainable development, environment protection, and climate change. But the thing is like, there's no such existing model for China, for Chinese people to look at, we can learn from. Because if you look at Western country, like London used to be very polluted. And then San Francisco, Los Angeles back in 15 years ago, quite polluted as well. So you have to synergize environment development, like development with economic development, as well as cultural development is very hard. So you have to explore yourself. This is the first challenge. There is no existing model you can learn from. Second, I think people starting to have the conscious about sustainable development, but we're lack of approaches. It's important, but how? That is the most important part. But central government has policies. The policies are almost like principles, like targets, like goals. But you have to need some tools and like the proper way to deliver that goals, right? For the local executors, they have to think about how to do it, but their lack of capacity to think about it and to do it. So I think there's need of a lot of challenges from that perspective as well. I'm just talking about internal challenges, but there's also external challenges from the other countries. China now is facing a lot of challenges. Like the requirements or demands for China to cut down or reduce its carbon emissions or to make more efforts in terms of sustainability, it's in place. It's quite urgent, but China, like international society, they don't understand the internal paradox of China. So China needs time to or needs time to adjust its development strategies, especially right now we kind of integrated the sustainability into our national development goals or strategies. It's not like a special task, but integrated. It's kind of integration. So we need more time and space by, you know, the external forces over there now. So it's kind of, we're facing external paradox, the internal paradox as well.
Okay. It is very interesting that you mentioned there are some internal and external issues and challenges lying ahead. What do you think? Do you think that the Western approach and the Chinese approach towards climate combat must be very different?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that people's mindset is quite different. I think in China, you have to use more, let's say you educate the public. You cannot just educate them from the moral ground, because we should love the nature, how important nature is, how loving that it is. You have to use a kind of market mechanism to educate the public what you can benefit from that. This is a very a different from, let's say I used to study in Sweden. So in Sweden, you just need to tell people why nature is important to the human beings, their lives as well. We have to respect, they're equal to us, we have to respect them. It's easier to communicate with them in that way, but in China it's different, total different stories. And also there's unequal development from the coastline to the inner China. So there do people have different priorities, but in other Western countries, people may more let's say the environment development could put first three things or first two things for a country to develop. They already reach some kind of common goals, common sense. But in China, there is still, people didn't reach the same importance towards environment issues. Yeah, it's really, there's a lot of conflict of interests you can see.
So you are 24 years old, but you have always been a very active speaker in a lot of climate change related conferences, including the very recent one in Madrid. So what drives you to get involved in the sustainable sector and to initiate the Youth Leader Fund?
I think you guys can understand me. You lived in China, you're traveling around the world, now you're living in London. And those cross-cultural and cross-reality experiences make you to think about why we're living such different physical environment, while the water in London is so clean, and while that in China is so, you cannot drink your tap water, right? Let's say in Sweden you can drink the tap water directly. And the most important thing is I just realized how I took for granted that I go the water should be boiled before you drink it, when we're in China. Yeah. But in Sweden, it's still a different story. It's why should we have to swallow all the consequences made by the previous generation, right? People have at the same age as us or younger than us, they can have total different kind of life. So we're thinking, can we change it? Can we do something to change it? So that's how I start to think about it. And also I grow up in the countryside, nature is in my blood. I know how nature has huge impact in my life. So I really want to, I can make some changes in a way, but the thing is different. I didn't label myself in a big way. I don't label my initiative as a big thing, because this is just simply what I want to do. It's the personal thinking. If you feel what I'm doing is what exactly you want to do, then just join me. So I don't feel I'm doing big thing, but just small thing. Yeah,
because all the small things finally will make to something bigger. So yeah, I think these little steps really do matter. And then so I just want to come back to the part where you mentioned there are different approaches that we still need to figure out. How can we actually achieve the final goal of combating the climate change, how to achieve better sustainability? So for these approaches, a lot of people have argued that we've already had the technology we can use to combat climate change. Do you agree on that argument? If not, where do you see us at this stage of the technologically speaking?
I do think there are some technology can help us to achieve a sustainable future, but technology put in place is not simply you use one new technology to replace another one. Once you put one new technology at place, there means that there's a lot of people's behind. How are you gonna deal with the people's behind? That's a really big one, even bigger than the technology itself. And then I saw let's say there's a lot of technology like blockchain, AI, and put into place in the food sector, fashion sector, and energy sector. So you say people are trying to solve it and trying to use it now. All of things you have to look at it from time and space dimension. It works now, it may not work for long run. You cannot just put like a certain judgment on this at this point. But we do have tried to use some technology to solve the problem. But as far as I tried, as far as I talk with people, I found out like the fundamental factors for sustainable development, it's about people. It's a creative idea and the mindset of people. Technology is just something to visualize our minds, to visualize our approach in mind. It's a tool somehow. Just look at people itself. I think it's very important. Just don't forget people are more important than that. You compare with technology itself. Yeah.
Can you elaborate more about why would you say people are the most important chain in this war against climate change, and why would you think solving, like making people being aware and making people take actions are the best approach? Because I know there are different components. There are industries, there are governments, and there are institutions, but consumers, obviously we play a very important role, but how important our role actually are? How much can we contribute as consumers?
When you talk about any kind of agencies or administrations, we basically talk about people. Yeah, right? Government is composed by different people. So this is first thing. And second, when you look at China, it is just such a top-down society. Mm-hmm. Once there's motivations or incentive policies coming from the top, then there will be a lot of grounded people going to work on that, because policies means there's a lot of incentive and you can benefit from that. As a consumer, I think all of us are not exist in the society as a one single roles. We're a consumer, but sometimes we'll also be the producer, be the leaders of industry or governors one day. So if we could educate the people, like why it's so important. So let's put it another way. Like let's say there's a lot of policies already in place in China, but the thing is, a lot of people know we have to do it because the government says it's very important, but they don't know why it's important, why it matters to us. But I just know we have to do it. So all of the projects, all of the mechanisms they designed, it's not sustainable. Once people get fully aware of the why sustainability is so important to us, the approaches that they innovated or the way they adopted would be more efficient, and they won't feel painful. But now it's everybody feel painful.
I completely agree. People are aware of the fact that there are climate changes, but they are not fully aware of the consequences. Through what approaches, in what way can we educate people effectively?
So that's what I'm trying to do now. It's why I'm doing I was doing the climate change communication. I found it's really hard to communicate with people about the consequence of the climate change if we don't do anything, right? So the thing is, let's say the sea level rising is the first consequence we could say from climate change, right? If you talk about with the people living in a coastline city, let's say Hong Kong or Shanghai, you tell them 20 years later or 16 years later you're gonna be underwater. It was 16 years and 17 years a long way. So they cannot, the consequence always lagging behind. So people don't feel that much emergent. This is the first thing. If you talk with people who live in the inland China, you feel I'm living in inland China, it doesn't matter to me. So there's no connection between them. Let's say the earthquake, before it exactly becomes the threat to our lives or properties, we cannot call it disaster. We can only call it natural phenomena, right? Mm-hmm. So we're trying to find a way to bridge the people with the climate change, the consequence of climate change, or consequence the it's not developed environment friendly development way. So I think visualize the consequence is very important. That's the reason why I choose art as one of my tools to communicate with the public. It's not normal visual arts, it's more engineer art where you can touch and feel the consequence of the climate change, sea level rising. I think it's very important. I say under Chinese content, I'm not talking about other countries. On the Chinese content, as I said, you have to let the people say what is the benefit behind those behavior change. So our approach is when I am engaging the young people to to ask them to use the technology to solve the problem. I bridge them with the real challenges from the industry and ask them to use the knowledge, the technology knowledge that they learned in school to solve the problem. The things like you can take the sustainability challenges as a challenges or problem, but also I always guide them to see the opportunities behind. How can you solve the problem at the same time economically or can passively empower yourself? I think this is very important. That's my approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I completely agree. To bridge the people with talents and the real problems. I think that's probably the cure. So just one more thing. I'm just really curious because we just mentioned youth engagement in climate change. But once we mention youth engagement, we probably have all heard of the name Greta Thunberg. So she definitely has inspired many people from our generation, even the younger generation. But sometimes she's being criticized for being unrealistic or too idealistic. So I just wanted you to explain, like, what role do you think us, the young people, can play in the long war against climate change?
So when we talk about the sustainable future, when we talk about future, basically we talk about young people. They are the future leaders, future consumer, whatever, future governors. So we talk about youth. So this is no doubt young people are very important. Second, I think I've been asked a lot of time how I think about her. And I always said, like, let's say like everybody criticize her like her idea approach is quite realistic. Let's take an example. Like if you say like working like 4 days or 6 hours per day is quite like unrealistic in China, but it's totally realistic in Sweden. I think it's just the same. If you have been to Sweden, you've been educated in Sweden, there's no surprise there are gonna be kids or like young people like Greta. So it like her approach works in Sweden at least. So I think, as I said, like Greta doesn't need the people, especially people who had the same vision as her, to judge her or to criticize, or like has a lot of critical about her. So all we need to do is like to just don't standardize the approach and don't standardize the motivation of your target group, because there are so many different social contents. So if you feel like Greta's approaches can works under your social context, under your country, in your country, and you feel like you can do it, and just follow her. But if you don't feel like but you still have the same goal as her, you aware of the importance of climate change, and you don't agree with her approach, then you can looking for other approaches which can be adapted in your country. If there's no, just create your own. So I mean, why we should standing together and just criticize the people who have the same vision, share the same vision, instead of to criticize those who have done nothing, still like the climate change denier, right? So I mean, it doesn't need my opinion, but as a young people, I think it's very important. I think I would like to call new words like called sustainable leadership. You know, I think that we have to have more young people have the basic knowledge or more deep knowledge about sustainability, also has equivalent or relevant experiences in place. I have tried. That's what I'm doing right now. I hope that through my funds, people can be educated about why it's so important for us in terms of sustainabilities and why it's matter to us. The second, I provide them opportunity, a platform to practice, to put in like their own thoughts and their own professions into practice. And later afterwards, I think they can be the future sustainable leader with knowledge as well as capacities. In terms of rich sustainable development leadership or sustainable leadership, we need a lot of resources, like let's say the mentorship. So I think the society or like all of different countries have to think about how to deliver those kind of mentorship. Also, we need a lot of resources in terms of, let's say I came out an idea, I want to practice. I need some resources to make my mind into practice, either like financial wise or like tool wise. We also need a platform. Once I have this kind of resources, I came out an idea, I kind of combine a solution out. I need a place to take a trials. I think the society have to think about it, and I'm trying myself to kind of create this kind of ecosystem to make the young people have a place to try it out and to believe them. It can really be something.
Yeah, I'm sure that it will really be something because we are the future anyway. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas, and it's very great to have you here. It was indeed very, very aspirational. You brought in the perspective of industry practitioner, and you're so young and you're so passionate about what you're doing. So thank you very much. It's great having you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.